This is a Muscle Cat Media production.
Back again on Baseball Expats on what was just a wonderfully outstanding weekend of baseball. The boys are all back together, Eric, after another brief sabbatical that he seems to keep taking once a week. Spoon is with us as well. Spoon, I'll start with you. Do you know what it's like to be Youngry?
I've been on the other side of it, yeah. And I sent it earlier in a different sentence with the Destiny draft, but the meme of Squidward looking out and watching other guys have fun has very much been how I've felt talking to you guys over the weekend about sport.
Yeah, well, that coming off the back of St. Louis's sweep of the Arizona Diamondbacks, which may feature in Spoon's Good, Bad, and Ugly a little bit later. The Cardinals winning all of those games by exactly one run, so why not gloat at the beginning of the episode? Eric, how was your weekend?
Oh, man, I was so pumped. The Jays rinsed the Padres during the week. The hockey season ended, and the Jays were like, damn, we're here. We're good to go. Like, dominated the Padres. It wasn't close. They looked so good. And then the weekend happened, and there's a kind of an age-old joke in Toronto baseball lore that, like, Tropicana Field is not the place for the Toronto Blue Jays, so people were pumped that they didn't have to go and play in Tropicana where weird things seem to happen, and you get to play the never easy Devil Rays, and they got rinsed on Sunday. So a sweep and then a sweep. The Jays are just this is what they are, right? Like, they're either really good or really bad, and they probably fall somewhere. Their record will fall somewhere in between.
Well, Spoon was sort of talking about the Diamondbacks in that kind of context when we talked on Thursday as part of the weekend pickoff. We're like, this is a really important time for the D-backs in terms of, will they be a middle-of-the-road team? Perhaps are they a good team that's been beating up on middle-of-the-road teams? I mean, it's tough to say when a team's lost 5 in a row by a combined 6 runs, as the D-backs have. I still think they're a pretty good team, even been on the other side of a sweep at home against them this weekend. But what's the overall feeling about how people in Toronto are feeling about the Blue Jays? Is it just sort of like hey, it's nearing the end of May, we don't think there's going to be much of this season, or is there still some bit of hope that team's going to be able to do something in a tough division?
I think that it's just the same as what it was at the start of the year. It's like, all right, couple high-end players, that's cool, but they're just so wildly inconsistent. I don't think there was any expectation of playoffs from Blue Jays fans this year at all in a tough division. I think most people expected them to kind of finish last, but a good last, like maybe be like 80 and 82 and finish last. And now, like the Orioles, they've won a couple games in a row, but they are the last place team throughout this all. So I don't know. I think this is kind of exactly what you expected. There was going to be some streaks in the good, some streaks in the bad. They're probably not going to go on like a 12-game losing streak, but they're not going to rip off 12 either. They're just going to be meh.
Spoon, how are you feeling? I mean, I know it's tough losing 5 straight games and feeling like you were on top of the world prior to that, or a team that they could be pretty competitive in that division. It's easy, I think, to overreact when you have really deep valleys like what you've had the last week. But for me, and look, this is the closest that I've watched the D-backs all season, watching them 3 consecutive days, probably be the better team on all 3 days on the road, but lose all 3 games. I still think they've got a pretty good baseball.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you go back and look at the last few years, they're just notorious awful starters. The best runs that they've had, including that 2023 pennant, it came from a super hot, like, August. What's frustrating is that, as they always say, games in May are worth as much as games in September. And to lose 3 games by a run like that, including a couple against the Dodgers, who are not running away with the West still. Like the amount of the D-backs are leading the league in games blown in the 7th or 8th inning. If you just take a few of those, all of a sudden we're not talking about a wild card pitcher, we're talking about a division race. And once again, they've got one of the better offenses in baseball. Like 1 to 9, you're pretty sure someone can do something. But it's just the pitching. Like we go out there and expect a guy to just get 1, 2, 3, and it never happens. And there's leadoff walks or bases loaded walks. Like the Gallen one was just so frustrating. So yeah, it's tricky. When we spoke on the weekend, I said the Cardinals was the start of this run, but more importantly, I think it now goes Pirates, Reds, someone else that is very beatable. So I wanted to win 10 of the next 15. They kind of lost the first 3, but let's wait and see in a couple of weeks. spoiler alert, it's not going to get him off bad watch. But yeah, I'm not dooming yet. Falling below 500 sucks though. Like, it's not a team that should be 26 and 27, I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And look, I think at times, even, well, really throughout the weekend, their starting pitching was quite good. I mean, I think Gallen just probably got left in a hit or two long in the first game of that series, but that's probably a byproduct of not trusting your bullpen, right? If you've got a bullpen that you trust can go and do the job with 2 on and nobody out in an inning in which the Cardinals had sort of come back in, or a game that the Cardinals had come back in, if you've got a bullpen that you trust, you probably don't leave them out there to give up the tying runs and then go on to lose the game. But it's a knock-on effect, right? We've seen this in St. Louis the last couple of years. When you don't trust your bullpen, ultimately it's your starting pitchers that end up being the bad guys, but it's not really through any fault of their own. It's just the fact that there's nobody in the pen that the manager trusts.
Yeah, and the flow-on effect is coming from the back as well because, I mean, J-Mark got activated. I think he gave up one of those runs his first outing in a few weeks. AJ Puck's still a few weeks off. So there's no one at the back end too. So it's kind of like, even if you're half decent, you're the closer now. Like if you've got a 3.8 ERA, you're an elite Arizona closer. So yeah, we're kind of getting pinched at both ends pitching wise. I think a trade is coming, honestly. Look out for something like Jordan Lawler getting traded. I know he's the top prospect, but they called him up because he keeps mashing at AAA level. He's hitless since he's been called up 2 weeks ago. He's striking out at a ridiculous rate. And they can't play him every day because Perdomo is one of the best shortstops in baseball. Ketel Marte's at the moment playing second base every day. There's nowhere for Jordan Lawler to play. So I think a move's going to come. It won't surprise me. You don't go and sign guys like Burns. You've got Gallen in his last year. Like, this is the window for the D-backs. So they're going to push their chips in, I think, in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And a couple of big moves wouldn't surprise at all.
You talk about being close as well. I mean, despite how good the Cardinals have been, it's so frustrating that the Chicago Cubs have been incredible in this same stretch. What's so frustrating to me as a Cardinal fan watching the Cubs is twofold. When the Cubs are good, it's always frustrating. But the other thing is, a good buddy of mine, friend of the show, Alex Cohen, has been called up essentially as the new voice of the Chicago Cubs. So by virtue of them playing well and him being their new television play-by-play voice, it's all over my feed constantly. He's killing it, right? Like, he had a PCA call on a home run a couple days ago.
His grandma was in the booth.
Oh, like, it's like Alex is incredible, and it's driving me crazy even more.
PCA.
Look, shout out Alex Cohen. I love you, buddy, but get off my feed with your Cubs winning nonsense.
Did you see his grandma?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Yeah. She joined the booth. Looked to be having a great time.
That was amazing. That was heartwarming stuff.
Well, whenever he was the voice of the iCubs, his wife would come in, because I want to say that, look, they may have lived in Des Moines. I think they did, and she may have worked. She works for a tech company out in on the West Coast somewhere. So I know that she was back and forth. But it's so funny. He used to post photos of her 3 or 4 times a year in the booth at iCubs games, just asleep. So she would clearly come in for the weekend to visit him and wanted to be in the booth while he was calling games. And he would just, as a joke, always take a photo of her just asleep in the 3rd inning of a random Tuesday night game in Des Moines. But shout out, Alex. Love what you're doing, but just get it off my feed, buddy. Come on. Go Cardinals. Before we get to some stats that Eric has seen and some sort of weird, quirky things from the week, I wanted to ask you, too, about this. Spoon, I know that you had an interest in the Sunday night baseball game a little bit earlier today. Good game, Dodgers and the Mets. Did you see the in-game interview with Francisco Lindor and his wife?
Yep.
Thoughts?
I don't like in-game interviews at all. I just think they're, especially for infielders, like that guy's at shortstop ready to field like a liner off the bat at 115. I feel like it's a fun thing that should be done in the All-Star game and not like competitive games. But maybe that's just old man yells at clouds kind of vibes from me. I'm not sure.
And I don't want to sound like a curmudgeon either, because like I love, and we talked about this. We've got an interview coming out with Tyler Maughan that we'll release on Wednesday, and we talked a little bit about it with him, Eric, in terms of trying to keep innovating the game. And I don't want to sound like an old curmudgeon either, but part of me is just like ESPN's gone, whatever. We got 4.5 months left on this MLB contract. Like, let's just do the most outrageous stuff that maybe has come up in meetings that people said no to for the last 10 years. And now we're going to be like, whatever, they can't cancel our contract, so we're just going to do it. There's a little bit of that for me, I think, that might be happening with the ESPN broadcast. Eric, I don't know if you saw this or not, but it was basically 5, 6, 7 minutes of an entire half inning where they were asking Francisco Lindor about what was harder, fielding a ground ball or changing nappies and those sorts of things. And his wife was the one asking him the question. It was good content. You can understand why they would do it. But I'm the same as Spoon. I'm like, it's not like he's an outfielder who's got massive amounts of reaction time. It's like if something stung to him at shortstop, like it's you probably want the guy to be in the mindset of I need to field something 110 miles an hour off the bat as opposed to talking about changing nappies. I don't know. It just struck me as strange.
I think it's going to, one day one of those is going to go horribly wrong. Like a bases loaded jam's going to get blown because the guy's talking and then we'll just never see them again.
I kind of like the interviews mid-game, but I think there's like a place for them. And I'm not too sure I'm a fan of like them actually in the field doing the interview, like you're saying, because it kind of devalues the intensity of the game, right? Like if this game is so important and these guys are getting paid $100 million contracts or more, and they're supposed to be like elite, intense all the time, and that's the aura they're trying to give off. Like talking about changing nappies while you're fielding a ground ball doesn't really like scream serious, which is exactly what they're trying to do. Now, I don't mind that stuff in like post-game conferences. I kind of like the manager interviews that you get at like the end of the third inning that you're just or with the pitching coach that you're just like, hey, what do you like about pitcher X on the mound? And they're like, yeah, I mean, his cutter's working really, really well today. Like those kind of insights, I feel like add a lot. But like, if you really want to do those kind of puff pieces, like, I don't know, go and talk to his wife in the crowd and give me some insight from that rather than just him. I think that's also kind of interesting too.
Yeah, imagine like Garrett Wilson running routes and just like chatting at the same time as he's trying to get on the end of like an Aaron Rodgers pass, right? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's where it's tough for people who aren't baseball. Yeah, for people who aren't baseball people to tune in and go, well, they're professional athletes in the middle of a game, and you're speaking to them. It's in baseball. Look, baseball's more conducive to it than probably any other sport, and I think the reason why ESPN continues to get away with it is every now and again they get like a little piece of gold from it, but it's like they're always mining for that gold, and you don't ever get it. Like I saw one with Bryce Harper one time. It was a 1-2-3 inning. And he was on for like a minute and a half, and half the inning, like the microphone didn't work, right? So it was just not a great viewing experience. So, look, I appreciate what they're trying to do, but again, I do think, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's probably ESPN just going, look, we got 4.5 or 5 months left to do some experimenting. Why not? Anyways, Eric, you've seen some things this past week that have caught your eye. What have they been?
Yeah, First off, boys, I absolutely love playoff watch in the middle of May. You would have listened to the show a couple weeks ago when we talked to playoffs at the end of April.
This is becoming a theme.
I do love Codify, though. They release some pretty good baseball stats and data. If you follow Codify Baseball on your social media platforms, they release the team's playoff chances from 2024 playoff teams of what their odds are right now. And I just find it so fascinating because, you fast forward 6 months, these teams are all feeling positive. They were in the postseason, lots to build on. Dodgers at 98%, Yankees at 96%, Tigers at 94%. How was Trick Scrubel today, by the way, rolling it up to 103 miles per hour on a pitch? Like the dude keeps getting better. Phillies at 89, Mets at 76, the Braves somehow at 68 after that horrible start. Astros and Royals at 50-50, the Padres at 42, the Guardians at 37, Brewers at 12. But the funny one for me was the Orioles at 2% to make the playoffs, a team that was like literally everybody had anointed them multiple World Series champions. So I don't know. The playoff picture and the percentages I always love seeing just on this data. And then, it's a cool story when the Orioles make the playoffs and they're like, they had a 2% chance on May 25th, 2025. You know what I mean?
Without looking, has there been any major shift in where we were at the end of April? I mean, the listeners that remember that conversation you and I had where you said basically stop watching baseball at the end of April because 5 of the 6 teams are locked in. Have there been any major changes? Well, yeah, I mean, I predicted that, so that was always going to be a given. But has there really been anybody else?
I suppose the Braves and the Twins. Everybody else, 5 of the 6 are still the same, but 1 has moved in, and it's the Braves and the Twins, which is exactly what the script says. Anyway, some other weird stats for you. The Pittsburgh Pirates, I don't know if you saw this during the week, they avoided becoming the first team since 1901 to go 27 games in a row without scoring 5 runs in any of those games. Now, they did score 5 runs in game number 27, but they lost 8-5, which is sad. And that's the most Pittsburgh Pirate things ever. But so in that stretch, 27 games, it's a month, right, where they didn't score 5 runs. That was April 22nd to May 23rd. And in that time frame, there was 71 instances where a team scored 5 runs in an inning. So 71 teams scored 5 runs in an inning, in between the fact that the Pirates scored 5 runs in an entire game. So, that is the most Pittsburgh Pirates stat I have maybe ever heard. And poor Paul Skeens, to build on our chat from a couple weeks ago.
And I mean, this is a question without notice, I guess, to both of you, but Bubba Chandler has been unbelievable in the minors this year. And there's no reason why they wouldn't bring him up. And I don't think it's a question of readiness for Bubba Chandler, because, I mean, you already have a frontline starting pitcher. He could potentially become another one. What was he, the third round pick in 2021? And I mean, everybody thinks he's at 22 years of age that he's going to be the next ace to get called up. But is it the fact that the Pirates aren't, I mean, look, they're not going to win anything for the next several years, and not getting any pitcher run support? Would there be any argument for not bringing him up to the big league team because it could be detrimental to his development, if that makes sense?
No, it's service time manipulation, right? It's classic Pirates.
It is.
Well, I mean, that's the obvious one.
They started next year when they're at least ending.
Trade him for Lawler.
I don't hate that. We'll call him up immediately and ask him to be our closer.
Yeah, probably.
Other ones, I think people in Pittsburgh need. But sorry, I just think people in Pittsburgh need something to get excited about, right? And it's like Paul Skeens, they have, but they get to watch him once every 5 days. Yeah, and then the averages.
My power just went on.
I don't know how well the Penguins are going. Those of you just tuning in, Adelaide's been having crazy weather, so Eric has power now. Sorry to step all over you, my friend. As you were saying.
No, the other one I had for you was just those feel-good stories or those call-ups. We're at that time of year where teams are kind of like, desperate, right? Like they're struggling. They're maybe not where they want it to be. It's not their A team at the start, but I love those feel-good stories. Like, did you see Willie McIver on the weekend with the Athletics? He was called up a day ago, and after 8 years in the minors, he finally gets that chance, that opportunity. 28 years old. 8 years is a long time to be held on to in a minor league system and to float around. Most guys are probably playing indie ball at that time. He ended up getting the biggest hit of the game, gave the Athletics the lead. He also threw a runner out. I just love watching stuff like that, part of what makes baseball awesome. So we'll go with the futility of the Pittsburgh Pirates and the weird stats, the poor 2% chance of the Baltimore Orioles, and a feel-good story of Willie McIver, of the things that caught my eye this week. Curtis. How about Curtis Mead? He hits homers in 3 straight games. He's on a 7-game hit streak. He recently changed his batting stance, and the kid that is literally from 6 minutes from where I sit right now, from my house in Grange, South Australia, the pride of South Australia, has 3 homers. That also caught my eye. That was pretty cool from a South Aussie, a dude that's trounced around the Sturt Baseball Club grounds before while playing for West Torrens, the home of Reese Spoon Columbus.
Hello, Turf. Very similar ball players, really. Similar trajectories. All right, let's get into some bets.
I wonder if Curtis Mead has ever hit 11th on a Saturday morning in winter ball
yet.
And could he do it after a brutal shift at the Wellington in North Adelaide?
Could he do it in Mad May? That's the question. See, these are the burning questions that we ask here on Baseball Expats. All right, Eric tipped at some good, bad, and ugly and some tips, which we'll get into in just a little bit with Spoon. But anybody who tuned into last weekend's show would have seen our first ever Destiny draft. What we did is Spoon had a couple of packs of baseball cards. We opened them live on the podcast and did a snake draft. We gave Eric the number 1 overall pick because the Toronto Maple Leafs had just been knocked out of the Stanley Cup playoffs. We were feeling good. I drafted second, Spoon third, and we did a snake draft. The teams that we ended up with were quite strong, And Spoon, the results that we ended up with, I think were quite surprising to the three of us.
Yeah, I'll recap quickly for everyone, and we'll do a little 3-2-1 now that I've got the final scores for the week. So in third place, myself, I managed 4 entire points from 2 Brandon Fort starts, which was not great, especially when we were initially thinking that pitching was going to be quite overpowered. I got 6 from Pete Alonso, which was not a bad result given earlier in the week he was floating around the negative mark, and 7 from Volpe for a total of 17 in third place. Now, the two of you were many lengths ahead of me, and this actually came right down to the wire today. So in second place, we had Rolsey. He got 18 from Sonny Gray, a very, very good start, and then a solid start for 18 points. Julio Rodriguez managed 16 thanks to a grand slam and a couple of other big leverage situations. And a little asterisk here and a little bit of pain. 3 points from Dylan Cruz, who managed 1. I think he hit a home run and then he got hurt the next game on the first day of the week. It was all
one game.
Yeah, and then was never seen again. So just the 3 points for Dylan Cruz. And yeah, ultimately we can probably look back on this one and say that may have been the difference because in first place, Team Eric, Christopher Sanchez, 13 points, a couple of decent starts. He did give up a few more runs than you probably would have expected against the Rockies, but the strikeouts really carried, and 13 was sort of right around the mark of a good score this week. Pete Crow Armstrong had his big moments. He hit 2 home runs in a game, including a grand slam. He scored 16 for the week, but I think 11 of those came in one day. And Kyle Schwarber managed 10. Didn't quite tee off at Coors like we expected and did have 10 strikeouts for the week, but 10 points is 10 points. So Eric takes out the first ever Destiny draft with 39 points. And I think we had a fair bit of fun, and the scoring looks like it's pretty fair.
I was dialed in yesterday to that Phillies game because obviously I had Schwarber and Sanchez was starting 2. And at the time I was a few points behind Rolsey, and it was cool. Like, I had fun with the Destiny draft because it did come down to the wire, and like I was sitting there being like, I need Schwarber to do something, right? And then he hits a late home run, and it was like I don't know, it was a meaningless Philadelphia Phillies home run, a team that I don't even follow, in the middle of May, but I was up and about pumped because Kyle Schwarber went deep to give me the Destiny draft. I think that probably put me in the lead. If I don't know the exact math behind it because Sanchez was pitching too, but I think that's what at least sealed it for me.
Yeah, well, and I had Sonny Gray overnight Australia time because they played that, whatever it was, that midday start Sunday, St. Louis. So I did sort of what Spoon does whenever he wakes up and he's had a wager overnight and he's, maybe on the overs and the strikeouts, is he'll kind of just go through the play-by-play and not just go straight to the box score. So that's kind of what I did as well. Sonny was striking out a few guys, hadn't given up any runs. I was like, this is going to be a deep start. And whenever I saw that he had 3 earned runs and ended with 5 strikeouts, I was like, I'm hosed here. I'm hosed. But I woke up and I think it was in the 8th inning of that game. Cardinals had just taken the lead en route to sweeping the Arizona Diamondbacks, in case you didn't know that was the result of the weekend. But yeah, it was fun to sort of go through it as if I was watching the game because there was no chance I was going to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch it. But yeah, I totally agree. And I think at the beginning of the week, we were maybe wondering whether or not the point system would work. And Spoon and I talked on Thursday that I think, like anything in baseball, small sample size, everything's going to be skewed. And you may think, it's all out of whack. But Spoon, I mean, we talked offline. I think the arbitrary scoring system that you came up with has actually worked out quite well.
Yeah, I think what we really wanted was a great week to be a great week, right? And that looks different for a starting pitcher who makes a couple of starts compared to a hitter, and an average week to be an average week. And I was very good at obviously selecting the guys who had poor weeks. So if you look at the numbers, it does sort of track. And I think, Dylan Cruz could have given you probably 10. And with 2 good and maybe 1 great players, you're probably looking at something around that 45 mark, which is, 15 over 3 guys as a sort of a par score. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to maybe next Monday we'll do another one, and we'll get a bit more data and start to see what good scores are over the course of the season.
I can't wait for the inevitable Netflix documentary about the Destiny draft, where they start with an opening montage about this craze that is sweeping the nation, and card sales have gone way up. And then they cut in to Reese, to Spoon, sitting in his room, maybe at Adelaide Oval, watching Port Adelaide or something like that. I don't know what it is, being like the man that started it all. And we have that exclusive interview. Like that is going to be must watch Netflix documentary material.
Created the game and still hasn't finished better than third in a single week.
The beautiful irony of it all.
Yeah, yep. Killed by his own invention, I think was the words that Spoon used. I thought, Eric, you were going to say that it was started by a Toronto Maple Leafs rant, because that's really what started it all. We will step aside, and on the other side, Spoon will give us his good, bad, and ugly from the week. We'll get some tips from the boys. Stay tuned here on Baseball Expats. Back now for some tips from the boys ahead of the weekday slate in Major League Baseball. But before we do that, Spoon, your good, bad, and ugly from the past week of baseball.
Yeah, so Eric actually touched on this one just before. This good shout-out is not great for my Hunter Brown crusade this year, but the good just simply has to be Tariq Skubal. Not only did he dominate the Cardinals last week, cost me a unit on the pod play, as we discussed on the weekend pickoff, he did something historic this morning. Nobody has ever pitched a Maddox, which is a 100-pitch complete game shutout with 13 strikeouts until today, and he did it against a divisional rival. I don't know about you guys, I think it's probably fair to call him the best pitcher in all of baseball right now. And honestly, I'm not sure Hunter Brown can keep this up. If they're going at the same pace right now, it's starting to look like a back-to-back American League Cy Young defense for the Tigers ace. So fair play, too good. Probably the most fun guy to watch right now, I think, on the mound for any team. The bad is definitely something we touched on briefly before, and I've touched on for many years of my life. The Arizona Diamondbacks are bad at the moment. They are on a 5-game losing streak, and they have a total run differential of 6 runs during those 5 games. There's simply not a team in baseball that is less clutch right now than the Snakes. Things are not looking great. They out-hit the Cardinals 30-20 in a 3-game sweep over the weekend. They're 23rd in baseball for batting average with runners in scoring position. And they seem to, Rolsey, you saw it. They kept getting the right guy up at the right time, even in this morning's game, and just could not find a way to win. I think it was 2 on, no out this morning, top of the lineup. And the only reason they advanced any runner at all was because Arenado nearly died falling into the seats. So, yeah, the Arizona Diamondbacks are bad. Something needs to change. Hopefully a 3-game set against the Pirates at home will be the start of that. And now the ugly. This is a shame we actually didn't get to talk to Eric for the weekend pickoff, because there was the perfect setup today or over the weekend leading into today for an avalanche. So the Athletics did break the streak today, but they'd lost 11 straight games coming into the series finale against the Phillies. They blew 4 saves during that streak, and they had a bullpen ERA of over 10. And what I really didn't like was they put their young star Mason Miller on the mound today for the 3rd straight outing after he blew a save yesterday. This is a young guy throwing 103. You're not competing. You've lost 11 straight games. Don't put mileage on an arm of a guy that you're going to trade away in the next year anyway. I don't like seeing that. You can add some frustration from the team around their ballpark to this ugly part. There was an article I read yesterday. The manager challenged a fair or foul call down the left field line that he just had to guess because from the dugout they can't see the left field foul pole, which is insane. And the starting pitcher yesterday banged his head on the dugout roof. So, yeah, definitely, in a sense, the D-backs are lucky that the A's exist so that they don't get ugly spot, because the A's are definitely getting this week's ugly watch. What do you boys think of that?
I like that Curtis Mead played a part in foiling your Hunter Brown dreams, because it's the most Spoon thing that could happen. That of all the players to start getting hot, it's a South Australian that provides a pivotal blow that could come down to just pennies in a race between them. And it would be so ironic if it was the one South Australian in the big leagues that gets it done.
Well, the good news is you said he's only 6 minutes away, so I'll be able to take my grievance and my receipt. Get my pound of flesh in person.
Just touching, you talked about that play that Arenado made, today, where he tumbled into the stands. The challenge from Torey Lovullo, I thought was brilliant because he had made the catch, tumbled into the stands, and they were like, okay, it's dead ball. He goes, no. He wasn't challenging the catch. He was challenging the fact that the umpires didn't allow the runners to advance. It was a one-run game. And I think that was in the ninth inning. It was a one-run game in the ninth inning. That was the second out. It was the difference between runners at first and second and runners at second and third, and the umpires didn't pick up on it. Because he comes and said, I want to challenge the call. He challenges the call. Everybody in the stands is like, he clearly caught it before he went out of bounds or before he went into the stands. But the rule is that if you go out of the field of play, even after you catch the ball, the runners get to advance a base, which I thought was brilliant. Of course, it didn't matter because ultimately Cardinals were able to get the final out and win the game and sweep the series. But that's the stuff that I love to see when managers are so locked into a game, that they understand the nuances so perfectly that they were like, you know what, this is, a base hit there gives you the lead in the top of the ninth inning.
Yeah, you compare that to a guy like Brian Snitker, who Braves fans are trying to run out of town, who picks his, picks his pinch hitter off the bench based on vibes, effectively. Like I thought he was going to bring some magic. Is like a real quote around getting like an Arcia up on the on deck circle, and he actually came out and said today, this is Brian Snitker, that a lot of Austin Riley's errors are because the groundskeepers are doing a poor job, which is just like insane chat, really. It's like a major league ballpark. I'm sure there's not like unusual blades of grass. It's not a day 4 test wicket in, the Sahara desert that is like an Indian cricket deck. So, yeah, I do love Torey. He cops a lot, but he definitely knows baseball, which is what you want. Yeah,
I mean, even as a Cardinal fan, it was annoying that he was able to challenge because, like I said, a base knock gives you a lead as opposed to probably just tying the game. But it was brilliant managing because I think he had 40,000 people in St. Louis going, what is he challenging? And the next thing you know, there's runners at second and third base because he understood the nuance. I thought it was very, very cool.
Just on the ugly bit that I mentioned about the 11 straight losses for the A's, the Phillies had won 9 as well. So it was actually just the perfect Eric avalanche. And if he picked it on the weekend, he would have gotten to game 3, which was today, and ultimately had the max stake kind of exposure and then result. And I'm assuming they were probably home dogs as well, which is another setup that Eric is fond of. So let this be a lesson to you all. Take annual leave at your own peril because you leave units on the table in doing so.
And we encourage anxiety on this program as well, which is exactly what that would have induced. We'll get into some tips for the boys as well. Just quickly recap Spoon's picks from the weekend pickoffs. But it was a tough one. You had Brewers, Pirates, Freddie Peralta, Paul Skeens to combine for 13 or more strikeouts in the first game of that series. And wouldn't you know it, they ended on 12.
Yeah, and I think Skeens had 9 and Peralta had 3. So those are frustrating ones where I would rather have both guys go 6 and just deliver an average kind of start, whereas one guy shoves and for some reason Peralta just could not throw strikes, and you're just watching that pitch count go up and up and up. He's in the 4th inning. He's on like 87. You're like, oh, no.
On the other one on the weekend, you were looking for a Jays win on a getaway day against Tampa Bay. This was in the Sunday game. The game just gone by a few hours ago, and they couldn't deliver for you either.
No, I've never been able to catch the Toronto Blue Jays. Every time they seem to turn a corner in my mind, they are just gone, like trying to grab smoke. So I might stay away from them for a little longer and leave that to Eric's sort of area of expertise.
Well, as we say on this program time and time again, you're only as good as your best. And those that have been following Spoon on Spoon Does Baseball on Instagram and X would have felt the fruits of his labor. So, Spoon, let's try and pick ourselves up off the canvas. And what have you got for the great listeners this week?
Well, yeah, as you said, I think I'm 4 losses in a row. So might be an opportunity for Eric to potentially avalanche me as a tipster. If we're going to be looking to break a streak, he might just want to allocate some of his own units on me because I'm going to break the streak at some point. I've got a bit of an interesting one. Tomorrow's slate's really different. There's only like 4 or 5 games that are during the day, which is not how a Tuesday here in Australia sort of normally looks. I spoke before about I think this Pirates D-back series is going to be the start of maybe a little mini resurgence for a team that should be performing better than they are. It's a tricky one just looking at pitcher markets. So I'm going to get a little bit niche, which I have been known to do on occasion. And I'm looking at Geraldo Perdomo for 2 or more total bases at $2.90 on Bet365, which is a much better price than you'll get at other books at the moment as well. you're getting a price based on a guy who's batted in the 9-hole all season, and they like him there because he's got such a great on-base percentage, and he's kind of basically, modern baseball talks about the 9-hole basically being a second leadoff guy now, so you've got a higher chance of someone being on for the top of the lineup. I think there's a small chance that the lineup gets shuffled around tomorrow. You've got a lefty on the mound in Heaney. Corbin Carroll was typically the leadoff guy, but his numbers against lefties aren't great. He's been striking out a lot. And that series against St. Louis was pretty brutal for Corbin as well. So I think there's a little chance that Torrey does tinker with the lineup, and any upside on Perdomo's position in the lineup would be great. Even if he doesn't get moved, the Vegas has set the D-backs run total tomorrow at 5.5. So they're expecting some offense. Jerry, as he's affectionately known in the desert, has the lowest strikeout rate in the team at just 11.2%. He's flying under the radar of many. He's got 144 OPS plus, a 2.6 WAR on the season. I think there's some positive momentum to come in the desert, and the switch hitting underrated shortstop Perdomo can be the guy who gets that done. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, having watched him play for the last 3 days, probably closer than I've watched him previously. I mean, I thought he was you guys' best on the weekend. I like the way that he plays too. Like, I mean, it's a Diamondbacks team that's got a lot of swagger just because there's a lot of different types of players on that team. But what was interesting, and I think it was the guys on the Friday night broadcast, on the Apple TV broadcast, talking about how he came in and was just kind of this flashy new player when he was young, popped in, and even some of the old, more kind of grizzled guys liked what he brought from just sort of a clubhouse standpoint, and how quickly he's been able to kind of channel that into a leadership role while still being a pretty young guy. I've actually was really impressed with what I saw from him on the weekend. So it'll be fun to watch him in that Pittsburgh series coming up.
I like it because it's well researched. And at first I thought you were going to kind of be like Snitker and just like you were just pointing at a dude in the Diamondbacks lineup being like,
he's due.
They're going to get hot. He's due. I feel some magic about this guy. But that was pretty well founded. So I'm on board with it. I'm going to jump on it.
Yeah, I think what I like as well is he's such a hustle guy that when you're on a play like 2 or more total bases, I want to see you hustling out of the box, chasing that double. Like if you're just like jogging along the line to first and that's the only hit you're going to get, you don't lose. Like if you're trying to stretch a single to a double, you don't lose that single. And for someone who's financially invested, I want to see you legging that second.
Stretch everything. Yeah.
And Jerry's the guy for it. So I think that'll be a little bit of fun to watch. And I like the matchup against Heaney. And maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll see that Torres decided to put him in the leadoff spot. And at that point, you'd be getting $2 about something that we can lock in $2.90 right now. That'll lead me on to Wednesday. A few of the pitchers I really like are in action on Wednesday. So I had to choose between, pod favorite Hunter Brown, who we've just discussed a little bit before. Corbin Burns has been terrific lately for the D-backs. Joe Ryan's a favorite. I'm not going to touch those guys, though, and I'm going to hone in on the Giants-Tigers matchup, which is pretty early on in the slate. You've got Logan Webb, who's still in the NL Cy Young race, probably 3rd or 4th favorite at the moment, against Jack Flaherty, who's been really good for the Tigers in recent starts. And I'm going to be looking at a combo strikeout play, probably going to be 13, I think, for $2. These are guys that have like a pretty elite strikeout stuff. They're also teams that are striking out a lot. The Tigers and the Giants are, I think, both bottom 5 when I checked yesterday in strikeout rate on the year. So there's a genuine chance you're going to see one of those guys able to pick up 7, 8, 9, and hopefully not like the Skeens play we just discussed earlier. The other one just needs to pick up his 5 or 6, and you're looking perfectly at that range. And I think I'll go the quarter unit again on a top up at around it's probably going to be 16 to get 5s. So let's do that. Let's whatever the line is that starts with the 2 that I think will be 13. And then whatever the line is that starts with a 5 that I think will be 16 as the top up between Logan Webb and Jack Flaherty on Wednesday morning.
Well, I think the baseball gods owe you a little bit for what happened to you last week with Freddie Peralta and Paul Skeens. So let's hope that Logan Webb and Jack Flaherty, former Cardinal Jack Flaherty, can get it done for you on Wednesday here in Australia. Eric, what have you got for us for the week?
All right, boys, it's going to be an avalanche time for me to start, and I'm going to be fading the Tampa Bay Rays because they're on a 5-game winning streak, but they beat the Toronto Blue Jays, and I think the bookmakers are looking kind of fondly on it right now. They are at home, so I don't normally like to go against that home team, but they're also playing the Minnesota Twins, who are a friend of the pod. We're going to call them the Minnesota Twins now. And they were on that big winning streak. And now even when they lose close, right? Like they lost 2-1 to the Royals over the weekend. I think it was, 5-2 against the Brewers the other day. But they're in every ball game that they play. I don't think Tampa Bay really is that team that you're going to see rip off 8 wins in a row this year, although they seem to do that every year, I guess. But I just kind of have a feeling that that's just not who they are. Minnesota Twins are a really good team. Right now, the key, though, is the first game in game 1 because they're 2-10 dogs versus the Tampa Bay Rays. So I am going to be hoping that it gets it done in game 1. Otherwise, it's going to be one of those ones where it might be like you have to bet 6 to make 6.5. But, this is how an avalanche works sometimes. Sometimes you boom, sometimes you break even, but at the end of it, you end up ahead. So, yeah, I think I'm basically betting on the Twins to win a game, but specifically tomorrow at 2:10 versus the Tampa Bay Rays. So that's my bet number 1. You want me to jump? Any thoughts, or do you want me to jump into number 2?
I love it because I love that Wednesday is Joe Ryan, Taj Bradley, and that even if you are like if you're getting underdog pricing tomorrow, I don't think it's going to switch suddenly to like $1.60 on the road, even if Joe Ryan's starting on Wednesday. So you might be getting 185, 190 about a guy who's got a 2.68 ERA and has just been dominating recently. So I think you've got like nice little fail-safe measures throughout the Avalanche as opposed to some of the others where we're just kind of free-falling in limbo.
Well, I think it does really help if that's day 2 as well, particularly in the Avalanche, because you basically 3 units to win what you would hope to be 4+. As my computer is showing balloons. Thanks, Apple. But I think in game 2 is when you would want the most favorable pitching matchup with the way that, say, like a 3-game Avalanche could work, right? Because, I mean, obviously if you win game 1, that's the ideal. But by winning game 2, you still only have 3 units invested. And if it's better than $2, then you're still going to be making more than a unit. But as you said, Eric, once it gets to game 3, in some instances, you might be laying 6 total to win, 6.1. So that being a favorable pitching matchup for you in game 2 of that series is probably a good thing. Sometimes
you do get those booms, though, on the final day. And the Athletics example that Spoon mentioned earlier was a good example. Like they would have been paying potentially close to 3. So I'm not have to look at what the line was. But on those ones, you actually come up multiple units ahead. But this case won't be that case.
Yeah, Lozano was starting as well that game 3 today. Ask me how I know. I know because I got burnt. But yeah, you would have got a nice price about the A's for sure.
The other one I'm going for a some call it boring. I call it, I just like them. Over-under bets are sometimes fun to watch, especially in baseball when you can kind of take a look at the pitching and then it's exciting late because the bullpens are in there and it's out of your hands. Anyways. Chicago White Sox, a fun team to always watch. So let's make them even more fun. They're playing the New York Mets tomorrow. And Adrian Hauser looked pretty good in his first start last week. Tossed 6 innings, shutout, looked really good. I like him to roll that over again. I think he's a guy that can back that up. The Mets are rolling out Clay Holmes, and that is a good matchup, right? The White Sox are scoring 3.3 something runs a game, 3.3 runs a game. And on the road, they're scoring less than 3 runs per game. So the line was at 8.5 at last check. I don't think the White Sox put up a big number, and I think Hauser keeps that score line down a little bit. And Holmes also has a 3 ERA at home. So I think because the White Sox aren't going to score a lot, and the Mets aren't going to score as much as you think, I like the underplay on that. It was $1.87 at last check. So I'm going to watch the over-under on the White Sox Mets. In a weird sentence.
Yeah, I like it. I was watching the Mets game today. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the chat about Soto and like some of his struggles recently. His swing looks weird. He's grounding, like his ground ball rate's gone through the roof, and he's just not the guy they were kind of expecting so far. The good news is he's got 37 years left on his contract or something like that to figure it out. So they're probably not panicking just yet. But it hasn't exactly been a sort of murderer's row top of the lineup in New York that they were expecting initially. Alonso today homered, but he broke the longest homerless streak of his career, I think I saw. So yeah, it's an offense that's probably been scuffling and relying on quality pitching, quality relief help as well, like you said. So yeah, that's probably one where they could get out of there at 3-1, and like they did today against the Dodgers, and be happy with how they're looking, and you could be very happy with your under 8.5.
I think they could get out of there at 6-1, and we're still happy. I just think that the run total is going to be low from Chicago. And you pair that with the fact, for exactly what you're saying, I don't think the Mets run total is going to be crazy high, right? Like 5-2, 6-1, 6-0, 5-3. We're happy with that sort of line. I just don't think the only scenario I see this getting out of hand is if there's a huge market correction and the Mets score 21. So watch it happen now.
Yeah, those are only. Yeah, it's when one guy just can't bring his command or control that you really struggle. Like when they're issuing 1 or 2 walks an inning and you're on the unders and you're just like, we need lots of ground ball double plays. And usually the Yankees are the kind of team that will oblige.
Well, plenty to look forward to during the week from the fellas. We'll just recap Spoon's picks in the Pittsburgh-Arizona series. Geraldo Perdomo in game 1 of that series, 2 or more total bases. So we're going to ask for him to leg everything out, even if it's definitely a single. Spoon's asking for him to take second base. In Wednesday's Giants-Tigers game, the pitching combination of Logan Webb and Jack Flaherty looking at probably around 13+ for combined strikeouts, hoping that has a 2 in front of it. And then looking at a top-up, whatever potentially will get you with a 5 in front of it. Spoon thinks it'll be around 16+. But combined strikeouts in that game for Spoon. Eric's going back to the well. Seems like he's compensating for not having been here recently. He's going with the Avalanche again. Minnesota, Tampa Bay, fading the Tampa Bay Rays. You'll get plus money in game 1 of that series. And Joe Ryan throwing in game 2 for the Twins. Seems like a pretty safe Avalanche. That's what Eric's going with. And then we're going unders, White Sox and Mets in the Memorial Day game tomorrow. Well, boys, always a pleasure. So much fun. Look forward to doing it again a little bit later this week.
Yeah, let's hope by the time we next talk, the Arizona Diamondbacks have broken this 5-game win streak. Otherwise, I'm going to look even more blue than I currently look.
Go Giants.
We'll also have an interview with Tyler Maughan, good buddy of ours, who we did last week. That'll release on Wednesday, so looking forward to people getting to listen to that. Don't forget, you can check us out on YouTube. That long-form interview with Tyler Maughan will be available on YouTube. You can follow Spoon on Spoon Does Baseball on both X and Instagram. You can follow us at Baseball Expats. And we'll be back with you again on Friday. New time, same show. Weekend pickoff on Fridays, Australia time, from here on out. But until then, enjoy your week and enjoy your baseball. Bye, everybody.